Good morning. Nice to see everybody. In the Thursday morning group, we've been continuing on with a book here by Katagiri Roshi, Returning to Silence. Katagiri, I think most people recognize that name. Helped bring Zen to Minnesota. And just came across a couple teachings from a recent chapter that I thought might be of interest to chat about a little bit. The chapter that we looked at was called "To Live is Just to Live." I'll be excerpting from that chapter, and then also a couple other areas of the book that I thought wove together with this particular topic that I'll cover today. But maybe I'll just jump right into a Katagiri quote here to start us out. Katagiri said, "For 2,500 years, the Buddha has been teaching us that we are Buddha, that we lack nothing of the highest enlightenment. Still, we do not completely understand. It has not settled down in our hearts." This is a type of teaching that you run across every once in a while in Zen, this teaching of lacking nothing of the highest enlightenment. And I think it's a teaching that helps us recognize that this direct realization is actually here now. It's all that is experienced. It's all that we ever experience. It's always completely available. But still, I think we hear that teaching and something feels, we think of the term enlightenment, something feels distant or missing, like don't quite understand the full depth of what Katagiri is saying there. Or as he says, it doesn't settle down completely in our hearts. So I thought I'd explore it a little bit here. What this teaching is talking about is actually non-obstructed, unfragmented reality. And that's what it's pointing back to us. But as I say, something seems maybe, we'll wonder about what this is, or maybe I think somewhat often the notion of enlightenment or awakening brings with it a notion of kind of fixing things or having something different or a little bit better, or something is transforming into something that's different than our usual experience. So very naturally, we'll kind of wonder about it. So I don't know, it shows up in a lot of different ways, how the imagination tries to deal with what we read about, particularly these teachings. Because we normally read something and then we'll try to make sense of it in our usual way. And that usual way is to recognize that, a usual type of study is we're taught something and then it's kind of reflected on something else, we're being given something. So we'll kind of wonder, and maybe it's just a very vague feeling of, what is this? It's almost like, I think, if we wonder what it is that friendship is, or maybe, just as kind of a thought experiment in some sense, we wonder what friendship is, or we wonder what it means to have people who are close to us. And, we could speculate about something like that. But when you slow down a little bit and you take a look at what's going on in this particular thought experiment, is that the moment we start wondering about it, then we're basically distracted. We're distracted from what actually friendship is. So when we start wondering about it, that very immediacy, that kind of full-bodied aspect of friendship, our closeness to people, sort of takes a back seat in a way, because we're just wondering. We're, again, it's very normal to, maybe not in terms of friendship, it's a very natural thing, so we don't think about something like that, but maybe this example sort of puts it in contrast a little bit, that it's the same thing with enlightenment. If we're wondering about it, then this immediacy that Katagiri is pointing to is sort of taking a back seat. So we're distracted from it, and then, if we're wondering about a friendship, what friendship is, when we just live, friendship can just be what it is. It's quite clear what it is. And it's clear that it's always there too. A friendship that we have with somebody, or loved ones, family, whatever. We don't need to identify anything there. It's something that is happening right now. Same thing with enlightenment. It's not that wondering about something that is missing or something that's distant is not quite getting at what Katagiri is trying to help us understand. And it's certainly not something that needs to be understood intellectually. But since we do, in a pretty normal way, wonder about what the teachings are pointing to, and again, it could be a notion that this practice or enlightenment, awakening, is kind of fixing something. That's precisely why we have to practice. And Katagiri says, this is why we have to practice constantly. We have to practice because we have a mind. So this complexity, and again, it's totally understandable, because our usual way of navigating the world, we're using a lot of different ideas. There's a lot of components of our life that are, sort of intermixing and so forth. And thinking is, we use thinking to handle some pretty complex situations in our life. And we just do that pretty much our whole life. So it's very normal to use that same kind of inclination in trying to understand what these teachings are pointing at. But Katagiri, as we'll see here, is saying that we have to practice because we have this complexity that pretty naturally comes up. So Katagiri is, as I say, he says, we practice because we have a mind. So the question is there something wrong with mind? And, also maybe say, is it something that we need to correct? I think Katagiri is, as we'll quote here, says that it's actually more of a taking care of than it was actually not at all to try to correct something or manipulate our mind. Katagiri says, what is wrong with mind? Nothing is wrong with mind. What is wrong is that for many years, we have given our mind the chance, the environment, the circumstances for it to be monkey mind. Monkey mind means that mind is always going out in many directions, picking up many things that are fun and exciting. If we always leave the mind to take its own course, finally, before we are conscious of it, we are going in a different direction than we expected, and we become completely confused. That is why we have to take care of mind. We have to take care of chances, circumstances, time, and occasions. So I think that's an encouraging type of teaching here, that Katagiri is talking about monkey mind, and that it's perfectly normal and okay that this happens, that the mind is going off in different directions. Actually, to settle down a little bit in the moment and see what's going on, I think we can see that monkey mind is actually the very ground that we see that there is nothing lacking of the highest enlightenment. So, in other words, the basis of what is really happening, what Katagiri is talking about, nothing lacking of the highest enlightenment, what is really happening is simply what is happening right now, which could be monkey mind, could be, anything. But what's truly happening is this reality of life. So in that sense, it is completely the ground of our practice. It's like we're, a basketball player sitting on the sidelines, and right when you step your foot on the court, you're in the game completely. So that's where we are. We're standing in the court, just this effort, this energy to practice wholeheartedly. We're right there, fully in the game. It could be the case we're just seeing monkey mind come up. That's what's showing up. So we're greeting these chances and circumstances, time and occasions as they come to us with an open mind. And there's some aspects of practice that can seem fairly difficult. Setting aside time and making the effort and so forth. But there's something here in Katagiri that, as he describes monkey mind going off in many directions, and then he says that finally, before we are conscious of it, we are going off in another direction than we expected, and we completely become confused. And I thought that I'd just bring that up in this sort of side by side by our notion of practice being difficult. But I think it's helpful to notice that this aspect of how we normally do things is pretty tiresome in a sense. So it's almost like we can kind of set down our notion of what's easy and what's difficult, because to do this practice really sheds some light on some extraneous effort that we normally put forward in life that's really not necessary at all. So as a part of this practice, very naturally, an at ease quality can come about, which again, sort of lessens our notions of what's difficult, what's easy in practice. With monkey mind, also, or maybe as a continuing of this, pretty easy to get a sense or to have a sense of good and bad, and understanding what that is. But it's almost like no matter how you look at experience, it can show up in an inverted way. And I think of monkey mind just as another example of that, where it seems like we could really think of it one way, maybe come up with an idea that it's something undesirable or bad. But I think as we study the Four Noble Truths and study human experience, we can see that monkey mind actually, what is at the depths of what's going on there is a great desire to wake up. And I think it also helps in a sense of understanding compassion for other people, maybe see confused activity going on in the world, which seems, the types of activity that seem very unhealthy. which is clearly monkey mind and leaning and chasing after things, people seeking after power and fame and all the different examples that we see in life. That really, when we see the depths of the human condition, we can see that I would say what's going on there is a deep desire to actually wake up, to understand what peace and tranquility is. Of course, we're engaged in many unhealthy ways of trying to find that, are kind of pretty much self-defeating ways, but just seeing monkey mind and knowing what really is going on there, I think that it does come down to this desire to actually understand what is true and real. And we feel compelled to want to understand what's true and real also because we already know what it is, which may seem kind of like a redundant statement or something, but we already know there is really something to this here now reality. It's something that we have already. So when monkey mind is going on, it's pretty easy again to define something as good or bad. But monkey mind is actually inconceivable reality. So I don't think we really are doing ourselves too much of a favor to really say anything about or to make a strong distinction about what, maybe seems like busy minds going on. It really isn't helpful to make a judgment about that or try to define it strongly in some particular way. Actually, what is going on is actually boundless reality. That's what direct experience is revealing. So this type of way of seeing things, I think, ties into what Katagiri what we started out with there, that we lack nothing of the highest enlightenment. So our practice, however it shows up, we can do meditation, and it's neither good or bad. We don't have good or bad meditation, and any type of judgment that we might have about practices, not really too helpful at all. And then Katagiri goes on here and talks a little bit about wholeheartedness. In the term shikan, he says, shikan is translated as wholeheartedness, which seems to be some sort of psychological state or pattern. But shikan is not a psychological pattern. Shikan is exactly becoming one with the process itself. So again, Katagiri uses the term wholeheartedness here to talk about shikan. So it's pretty easy to think of sitting as a technique, which maybe leads to a psychological effect, as Katagiri is saying here, but that's not what sitting is. In another part of the chapter here, he quotes Dogen as saying that sitting is actually sitting, which, at first glance, it kind of doesn't, why would we even say something like that? But I think maybe we could also say, well, I think that's pointing back to, again, to help us see that whatever is showing up in life is exactly what is happening. And well, of course, we can make judgments or chase off in different directions about what we think is going on, but actually it's truly what is happening beyond any conceptual idea. So Dogen in saying that sitting is helpful, because then we know that we can do this practice where we can simply do exactly what we're doing. And I think even with ideas of what techniques, maybe are thinking about techniques and psychological effects is actually just thinking about techniques and psychological effects. So it's the same thing, no matter what we're doing, that is fully what is showing up in the moment. So again, the truth is that we're always doing exactly what we're doing, but actually we rarely realize this, which maybe kind of seems like I normally realize that I am doing what I'm doing, but I think we're getting to something a little bit different in Buddhist teaching here. To actually do one thing at a time completely is to understand that we're actually doing what we're doing. So it's about realizing, and Katagiri uses the phrase, Shikan is exactly becoming one with process itself. So doing exactly what we're doing, realizing that process is exactly what our life always is. And I think from this, even from this type of direction that we can take, this seeing our life in a very simple way. Also, I think in my experience, helps to understand what techniques and effects are. So I think we can understand more deeply even kind of what our usual tendencies to try to wonder and get answers about things. So perhaps we maybe continue to be interested in psychology or techniques and effects and so forth. But the point, the kind of the central aspect of this is that we can see what they are instead of just instantly reacting to a notion of techniques or psychological effects, our desire for those things. We can still be interested in them, but perhaps not feel compelled in chasing after them, simply because they're seen as ideas, provisional ideas, maybe useful in a lot of ways, but so that's really the only difference that's going on here, is just to see what we're doing clearly, to do what we're doing, thinking about something and knowing what it is. And if we do know what it is, then really, where is the energy coming? Where could the energy come from to chase after something if we actually know what it is? And then Katagiri talks a little bit about climbing a mountain cliff, which I thought was interesting too. In a way, he challenges us a little bit in this section here. He says, we don't understand because we are in too comfortable a situation to see it. This is why we have to put ourselves into certain circumstances, such as climbing a mountain cliff, where we are completely on the verge of life and death. Excuse me. At that time, we really understand how important one step is, how important our rope is, and how important others' help is. At that time, the spiritual power of practice really penetrates into our skin, muscle, and bone. Something that came up, I think, as I was reflecting on this a little bit, is the challenge of watching our own mind, or seeing the leaning of mind. And maybe because it has, or it can have a bit of putting ourselves out of our comfort zone a little bit, or maybe something that we naturally wouldn't, or normally wouldn't do. So this seeing what's going on in our mind, but with kindness, seeing that can be a bit of a challenge or something that's a little bit different. And in seeing that, then I think it's possible to begin to see that oftentimes that leaning of mind is a kind of way of, again, I think it's, in a deeper sense, we're trying to find out what truth is, find out what peace actually is. But we're inadvertently actually trying to escape what's happening, what we're doing, for something else, for an idea. And as a part of this kind of non-comfort zone, maybe in some ways, we can see that sense of escape. And then also, as I say, with a sense of kindness, I think we can also see that it's not necessarily really helping to try to escape towards something else. And then also that it's actually not possible to escape. There's nothing to escape from. So all this is arising out of just a simple of awareness, and maybe a moment of honesty, something that's not something that we would normally do. Maybe it's just not our usual comfortable mode of operation. But it's just taking the time to come back to see what's happening in this moment. This tendency of wanting to escape, and in the end, that we actually don't want to escape. Not only, to realize that we can escape, but we don't want to escape what is true and real. This reality, this what we're doing in this moment. So for me, this story of being on the mountain has kind of the flavor of just doing exactly what we're doing, or doing one thing at a time. Just as sitting is, as Dogen says, sitting is sitting. So to have this type of practice where we can do exactly what we're doing, and to put ourselves in that situation where it's a little bit easier to see how we are distracting ourselves, or how we can distract ourselves, entertain ourselves. So the sitting is one thing at a time. That's what the assignment is, basically. If we get distracted, we can just simply recommence with awareness. Very simple practice. And always know that it's just this one thing, this one flavor. Again, even if it happens to be thinking, that's precisely what is happening. We can just come back and set aside our ideas. Katagiri also, he continues on here, and he says, first, do Zazen, but that is pretty hard. And then says, when the truth is completely digested in your life, there are no dregs or remnants there. Just show your life, Katagiri says. Just be there. When you just show your life, at that time, you are never tossed away or moved, or you're never tossed away or moved, and you do not wobble. And that quote, and then also what he was saying before about putting ourselves in a challenging situation. And you kind of hear this topic come up with Katagiri and Suzuki Roshi a bit. And in particular, Katagiri here says that you can understand how important each step is. You imagine yourself on the ridgeline of a mountain, and you really got to pay attention. For me, it's a imagery of really recognizing the importance of our life. So that's sort of the danger, this life and death that Katagiri is talking about. It's like another quote that we may hear at times, that to those who are not awake, it's as if we're dead already. So that's kind of the serious aspect, I think, that Katagiri is pointing at here, this question of life and death, and to put ourselves in that situation to really sense what is important. And then here we can see the importance of each step of the rope, and then of others' help too, which I think is a very helpful teaching there, to recognize the help of others. That help of others reminded me also of a quote that we had up on the screen. I think Cindy put that quote in there from Uchiyama Roshi for the annual meeting. A quote from Uchiyama Roshi. He actually quotes his teacher, Sawaki Roshi. And this ties back to Katagiri's talking about understanding the importance of others' help and practicing together. So Uchiyama says, each of us gathers and contributes his or her own little awakening mind to the general effort. Sawaki Roshi, his teacher, often said that in a place of practice, this is like a charcoal fire. Sawaki Roshi often said that a place of practice is like a charcoal fire in a hibachi. If you put in just one little coal, it will go out right away. But if you gather many coals, many small coals, each glowing just a little bit, then the fire will flame up. In the same way, every one of us can contribute a little awakening mind, and thus enable the Sangha to thrive. And I skipped over a part where Katagiri talks about sitting, and he says that, let's see here. I'll just read it real quick. He says, Zazen is best because Zazen is ridiculous. It is perfectly ridiculous. I don't recommend that you do something wonderful because everyone else gives you something wonderful to do. I want to give you something ridiculous. Then if you do this, it is really best. And if anybody's had the experience of describing to friends what we do here during meditation, there can be a sense of ridiculousness that comes up. Facing a white wall for 30 minutes, and why are we doing that? And we answer, I don't know why. It's kind of continues on through a series of answers that probably become more and more perplexing to the person who's listening to you describe it. But we smile, and some energy comes up as we describe that, because we know that it embodies the spirit of community, this lightness of recognizing that we actually can do exactly what we're doing. We can sit on a cushion and 100% do one thing, which is a rare opportunity. Rare in a way, but we can, bring this practice into our everyday life. So it doesn't need to be rare. So sitting together sometimes, maybe for a new person coming in, may look a little ridiculous at first. I remember when I first saw like a group of people facing the wall, it's kind of like, okay, I've never seen that before. A little strange. But this type of activity is not a confused activity. As we continue to practice, I think we can see that it's a path of sanity, actually. And it's a practice to understand what is true to life. So we do this practice together. It can be difficult in some ways, but we can see that importance of just one step, that importance of other people supporting our practice. We can see how our own practice really can help other people, help different activities, session retreats happen, and different practices that we do. So in the end, we can just have this wholehearted practice of sitting together in this one single activity together and actually recognize that's what our life always is, and to bring that into each moment of our life. That's pretty much all I have for today. I don't know if that triggered any potential questions or comments at all that you might have, or reflections. It's a wonderful book. Again, Returning to Silence. And so there's a lot of things at Dharma Field. We have study groups, a lot of ways to practice together. So definitely keep an eye open, I think, as a lot of you always do, to recognize that and to notice or to remember some other teachings that we hear from Katagiri about this being a practice for the long haul. And of course, that totally makes sense, that this would be a practice that is for, something that really envelops our whole life now and going forward. It's about seeing the full picture of what our life is and actually appreciating and being able to participate fully in our life. So no questions? Well, it was good to see you. Thanks.